The writer and comedian Steve N. Allen is with us. We're looking at some of the big stories of the day. Naturally, a lot of this revolves around the King's speech. Crime and justice, Steve, was another big one as well. Cracking down on antisocial behaviour, more neighbourhood police, tougher new penalties for offenders. I'm struggling with this one because, as I said in the last hour, I think everyone from Margaret Thatcher onwards has kind of said a variant of these words. We had Blair with the ASBOs. We've had community support officers under David Blunkett's Bobbies, I think they were called. They sort of didn't completely disappear, but were severely reduced. It's never out of the spotlight, this one, but is this latest set of proposals likely to change anything?
No, you're right. They have to do it. They have to give it the lip service. We all know the backdrop to this, don't we? We know that actually, if you're a bit more than antisocial, get yourself sent somewhere near prison, they'll let you off because they're full. We got too many people already in prison, so go on, commit some crimes. The idea of bringing down you don't serve your full sentence. It was 50%. Get it down to 40%. We can narrow this down to get them doing about 25 at this rate. So we know there's less of a threat. There was that story a while back of people, the police being told not to arrest people unless it was an urgent arrest. And I thought most arrests were kind of urgent because you're going to get arrested for it. Whatever it is, it must be pretty bad. You're going to get arrested. There's all the words, but there's even fewer teeth behind this.
I wonder...
It feels like there's never been a better time to be a criminal, so I might do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I constantly, and I'm sure you've seen them as well, Steve. I saw one yesterday of a woman just walking into a shop and knowing there were security guards there. I don't know, by the way, what's the point of a shop security guard? Because they go, well, we're not allowed to touch or stop anybody. It's like, well, don't employ a security guard then. I mean, they literally are failing to do what I assumed they were there to do. And this woman walks into a shop and she doesn't even have a bag. She just puts a load of stuff in her arm, walks out, realises somebody's filming her, and then gives a load of mouth to the person doing the filming. Clearly not fussed that she's being identified, didn't give a hoot about that. Security boy is standing by, sort of nodding sagely as if to say, I know what you've been up to. Yeah, well, do something about it then, doofus. Nothing at all. And yet, and we regularly hear that you would never get the cops out. I was speaking to a guy who manages a very big supermarket. He said, as if you call the police and say, we've caught a shoplifter, they will say, is the person passive or are they aggressive? If you say they're passive, then kiss goodbye to the cops coming out because they will more or less say, you deal with it.
Yeah. On a related note about actually having security in shops, I did a gig in Streatham a little while ago, and I was there earlier, and I went to just walk around the shops, went around a pound shop, whatever, and they had a cardboard cutout of a security guard, just so that from the corner of your eye you think, oh, no, there's not. And that's the only impact that cardboard cutout would have. But as you say, that's the same as an actual security guard.
Yes, it has exactly the same impact, which is zero. Yeah. So it seems...
What I liked about that one is the cardboard cutout that they had of the security guard was wearing a stab vest. And that, it's a bad place when even the cardboard cutouts are having to wear
a stab vest on. Yes. I mean, if you're going to have a cardboard cutout, then, go full Arnie or something. Stick the Terminator there. I don't know, put something a little more imaginative.
The Predator. Yeah.
That's what you want, isn't it? Yeah, something of that nature. Great British Energy. We're hearing a lot about this. The details are kind of interesting. It's a publicly owned company, but it's privately funded. That's the idea, is to enamour and invite lots of organisations to say, look, you'll be able to make money out of this somewhere, I assume, because people aren't just going to throw money in for no good reason. So you'll have sort of the private equity people, etc., will lob a load of cash in there because there's some returns, but it's publicly owned. And therefore we will be able to control it to some sort of level. It will develop, own and operate assets with a capitalisation of 8.3 billion of new money over the Parliament. I don't know how much of it they've raised or how this fully works, but the idea, the upshot of the idea is that we have nice, clean, beautiful energy, windmills in our back gardens. Forget your shed that you're in, Steve. You'll be up a windmill in about 2 years' time broadcasting. That's the idea. We're going to make it happen and we'll be the envy of the world. Will it work?
Do you know what? I like this one. And I like this one for a few reasons. I like this for the reasons I hate other ideas. So at the moment, we basically have the French own all of our electricity and China nearly owned a nuclear plant, right? That doesn't seem good. So what this does is keep the ownership as a UK publicly owned company. All right, that's a step in the right direction. One thing I hate as well is the push to become green seems to be costing us money. And that's not what you need when you've got cost of living crisis. Don't get me wrong. I love the idea of having tech that is lower carbon because you get people online who really push against this. It is, I'm from a chemistry background. It is simply the case that the carbon that you dig up is very difficult to replace. The carbon from a tree grows again in a short amount of time. So you're definitely adding more to it. It's neater to not need to do that. But I don't have to pay through the nose and bankrupt families across the UK for it.
Yeah.
So if there's private money coming from wherever, but we own the company and they're the ones paying for the development of the green tech, I'm not going to judge it yet. I'm willing to sit here and go, okay, let's see what you do. This could solve two problems.
I mean, there's a couple of issues around this. One, there seems to be general consensus that this idea of getting everything done by 2030 is, the good and the great, and even those that support the principle say that just can't happen. That won't happen. This full decarbonisation programme I'm talking about here, that will be difficult. And the other thing I still find confusing, Steve, and I know there's some nut jobs out there and conspiracy theorists on all sides of this, pro, anti, you name it. In fact, anywhere you look in life now, there's, see the Trump attempted assassination for details, etc. There's always alternative theories. But I'm watching people like the guy that started Greenpeace standing up going, this is nonsense. The CO2 issue is not a problem. In fact, I think he said on one thing I watched recently, he'd put more CO2 into the atmosphere if he could, because that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Now, this bloke's not an idiot. He's not a blithering fool. He's clearly got some scientific, with his background also, from the world of science, he's clearly got some reason for saying that. And all the while you have respectable people, not the tinfoil hatters, but respectable people saying this just doesn't make any sense. But Obama's former advisor on energy saying the same thing. You start to think, well, what am I supposed to believe here?
Yeah, it is difficult. You're right. There are more people who buy into conspiracy theories, and I'll tell you why I think that is. It's chemtrails. It slowly turns people into conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong. But yeah, it's bizarre that it's become so debated. I think we're obsessed with getting to the extremes of an argument so we can get the most angry and we get that endorphin rush of being angry at other people. For most of the discussion, there will be a lot of territory that we can all agree upon.
Sure.
So if you can get energy from the sun, why would you be against that? Now, there'll be some people like...
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, it's going to move jobs. There'll be fewer jobs in the oil industry and there'll be more jobs in the green industry. So parts of Scotland aren't happy about that because that geographically moves jobs will be. But in general, if we can look to the area we agree upon, achieve those things without to have a fight over it, we'd at least cover some ground first. But we're not living in that time, are we? You get a better headline by having someone ranting about carbon dioxide's only 0.04% of the atmosphere. And they never explain the fact that 99% of the atmosphere are gases that can't interact with photons. You ain't going to get any greenhouse out of... So there's less than 1% of the atmosphere could even do greenhouse stuff. That's never mentioned because it gets dull and scientific and people would rather be angry than scientific.
Yeah. So the fact that it's 0.0, because I keep hearing that one thrown around all over the place, that's not remarkable in itself is the point there.
No. So what's interesting about it is that, you have other hydrocarbons as well, but there's less than 1% that's an asymmetrical molecule, so it can interact with photons, so it can do the greenhouse gas. That means it's responsible for not the bad greenhouse effect. The fact that this planet is warmer than it should be, that's why we've got so much life. That is caused by such a tiny amount of carbon dioxide. In relatively recent time, carbon dioxide has gone from 0.03 to 0.04. That's quite a big percentage increase. If you don't just look at the absolute figures and look at the relative increase, you think something that's clearly potent has gone up quite a bit. But there's no TikTok videos about that. So
yeah, well, maybe you should make one, Steve, because I'd watch it. I'd just keep watching it as well. You'd be making a fortune. You're making a fortune out of that. Final one. Who's going to be the next Tory leader? We've got Priti Patel sticking her name, as the phrase goes, putting her name in the hat. Kemi Badenoch she's already suggested she will stand Suella Braverman. So it's the three-pronged attack from three prominent female Tories. Or it could be somebody else that comes in. Tom Tugendhat's name, Kent MP, of course, is often mentioned. And I'm sure there'll be a few others, the stalking horse character, as they like to refer to. Where would you put your money if you walked into Paddy Power tomorrow?
Definitely not Tom Tugendhat, because he basically announced this just after your Welsh First Minister had resigned and Gareth Southgate resigned. Was he trying to bury his own news on a day when no one's got to pay attention to anything? He announced he might be running. No, I think the Conservative Party are going to at least go through a time of being further to the right, because they're dealing with the reform issue. And one way to deal with it is, to move to the right, to try and see if you can have that argument while you're out of power. Yeah. I don't think you end up winning an election by ignoring the centre ground, not because I think the ideas might be wrong, but just statistically. You're trying to win an election that asks everyone the question, and that centre ground are obviously going to be the people who sway the final result. But right now is the time to fight it out on the right. It's a shame Liz Truss couldn't do it. That would be entertainment, wouldn't it?
She'd be great, wouldn't she? Why didn't anybody ever suggest Liz Truss? Whatever happened to dear old Liz? Steve, as ever, thank you. Steve N. Allen, the writer, the comedian and broadcaster with us on the programme.